Welcome once again. We begin with developments in the Middle East as the UK government is said to be coming under pressure, under cross-party pressure, that is, to halt arms sales to Israel. More than 600 legal experts have written UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak in this regard, warning that it might be tantamount to breaking international law over what they term a plausible risk of genocide in Gaza. The 17-page letter comes after 7 aid workers, 3 of them Britons, were killed in an Israeli airstrike in the enclave. According to the Campaign Against Arms Trade, Britain has granted arms export licenses to Israel worth only a little more than £500 million since 2008. British sales are lower than those of other countries, including Germany and Italy, and dwarfed by the billions supplied by its largest arms supplier, the United States. But a UK ban would add diplomatic and political pressure on Israel at a time when its conduct in the Gaza conflict is coming under renewed international scrutiny. Meanwhile, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres says Israeli killing of humanitarian aid workers in Gaza is uncalled for, reiterating the need for an immediate ceasefire. The World Central Kitchen, on its part, has released a statement calling for an independent, transparent investigation in the attacks to prevent future occurrence. Its founder, Jose Andres, has accused Israeli forces in Gaza of targeting his aid workers systematically, car by car. WCK urges the governments of those killed to press for inquiry and said they've asked the Israeli government to immediately preserve all documents, communications, video or audio recordings, and any other materials potentially relevant to the strikes in order to ensure the integrity of an investigation.
The devastating Israeli airstrikes that killed World Central Kitchen personnel bring the number of aid workers killed in this conflict to 196, including more than 175 members of our own UN staff. This is unconscionable, but it is an inevitable result of the way the war is being conducted. It demonstrates yet again the urgent need for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire, the unconditional release of all hostages, and the expansion of humanitarian aid into Gaza, as the Security Council demanded in its resolution last week. The resolution must be implemented without delay. The concept of human security, with its emphasis on people and prevention, has an important role to play in strengthening links at the local, national, and regional levels and creating momentum to tackle our shared challenges. I commissioned my 4th report on human security to foster this dynamic and contribute to a safer, more prosperous, more secure world for all. This means prioritizing investments in early warning, social protection, and other measures to maximize social cohesion and protect the security of every individual. These ideas are closely linked with our call for a renewed social contract anchored in human rights and based on trust, justice, and inclusion. Human security approaches can highlight blind spots and gaps in our understanding of today's interconnected crises. They can provide a universal benchmark to assess the effectiveness of development, humanitarian, and peace-building efforts. And they can integrate the analysis of immediate risks with long-term perspectives, prioritizing resilience and capacity building to deal with future shocks. Human security has proven its value as a framework to focus on supporting people to live in dignity, free from want and fear. It can help accelerate progress towards Agenda 2030, prevent the emergence of future crises, and deliver the hope people need. I urge all countries to use the important tool of human security to address today's multi-layered crisis and to integrate its insight into our efforts to prepare for future challenges.
There have been more reactions to the killing of the aid workers. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has slammed Israel's explanation for the aid workers' killings as not good enough. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, on the other hand, said Israel's killing of Canadian aid worker identified as Jacob Flickinger was absolutely unacceptable. Right now, no aid trucks have entered northern Gaza since the attack, leaving many Palestinians wondering how they're going to feed their families, as World Central Kitchen has paused operations in Gaza. Another U.S. charity also operational in Gaza, ANERA, has also suspended work because of the escalating risks faced by its local staff and their families. Both charities usually served 2 million meals a week across the Palestinian territory, where the UN has warned that an estimated 1.1 million people, that's half the population of the Palestinian territory, are facing catastrophic hunger because of Israeli restrictions on aid deliveries, the continuing hostilities, and the breakdown of order. Director General of the World Health Organization, Tedros Ghebreyesus, commented on the situation on Wednesday evening.
WHO is horrified by the killing of 7 humanitarian workers from World Central Kitchen in Gaza on Monday. The work they were doing was saving lives, providing food to thousands of starving people. Their cars were clearly marked and should never have been attacked. Delivering humanitarian aid in Gaza is already difficult and dangerous. Hungry people will go unfed because World Central Kitchen has quite understandably paused its operations. I honor our colleagues for their service and for putting themselves in harm's way to serve others. WHO has been working with World Central Kitchen in Gaza to deliver food to health workers and patients in hospitals. This horrific incident highlights the extreme danger under which WHO colleagues and our partners are working and will continue to work. But we can only do so with safe access. This means an effective and transparent mechanism for deconfliction must be put in place to ensure humanitarian convoys can move safely. We need more entry points, including in northern Gaza, cleared roads, and predictable and expedited passage through checkpoints. Delays and denials of humanitarian missions not only prevent us from reaching those in need, but also impact other operations and deliveries by diverting scarce resources.
We as humanitarians can disclose very sensitive information to those militaries. We can tell them who that we are, where we're going, what we're taking, how long we will be, so that they can use their military tactics to avoid attacking us so we can serve the people. That is a common objective of a responsible military acting responsibly in a conflict for which they believe they have a justification to carry out. That is not my choice to make, but it is the responsibility of all combatants in a military conflict to abide by the international humanitarian law, which is to allow access for humanitarians to the population who are at risk, and to ensure that the access for those humanitarians is planned, guaranteed, and supported.
Israeli authorities have released 101 Palestinian prisoners to the Gaza Strip. According to Gaza's General Administration, many of the prisoners were taken to medical facilities in Rafah, where they're being treated for fractures and other injuries suffered while in custody. Much earlier, an Israeli doctor at a field hospital within a detention center holding Palestinians warned conditions there are catastrophic and in gross violation of Israeli law. A letter to senior Israeli officials, according to the doctor, said detainees are shackled by 4 limbs 24 hours a day, causing severe injuries to their hands and legs that often require amputation. The letter also stated the detainees are regularly blindfolded, fed only through a straw, denied toilet access, and undergo major surgeries without proper medical care. want to invite Palestinian analyst and Israeli affairs Haldun Barghouti. He joins us from Ramallah in the West Bank. Haldun, thank you so much for joining us on the program today. There has been much anger against, the Israeli war in Gaza, the killing of innocent Palestinians there, especially by the Israelis' airstrikes. Does the killing of the aid workers who were providing food to those in need add fury for people in the region?
It does, and unfortunately that it does, while the killing of 33,000 Palestinian civilians in Gaza did not maybe reach the point of anger that we heard in the last 24 hours. This is the situation. Even an Israeli correspondent in Europe mentioned that, and he said we have been killing, or Israel have been killing Palestinians in Gaza, and our friends talking about the Western countries ignored that. But when their citizens got killed, they became angry and they told us, okay, you have to hold on. So unfortunately, and for the death of anyone is sad, but it seems that the killing of those relief workers led to their governments and other governments to know that what's happening in Gaza is not a war that, as Israel says, it's a killing machine that is harvesting lives of innocents every day.
Do you feel that these countries turned a blind eye to what Israel has been doing in Gaza under the pretext of killing Hamas militants, going after Hamas militants, killing innocent civilians? This is what Palestinians have been pointing out over the course of the weeks, over the course of the months since the war started, that innocent people have been dying. And now their own citizens are affected. Do you feel that somehow this was inevitable?
No, I think what's happening in Gaza is that everyone is targeted. Even when Israel has, let's say, Israeli soldiers has a fight with some fighters of Gaza, it's big news in Israel. We don't see any of these pictures. I follow up the Israeli media in Hebrew language most of my time because this is my work. And when there is an incident where there is a military or fire exchange between Israeli soldiers and Palestinian fighter, it's big news in Israel. So what about the rest who get killed? When families of journalists were terminated, no one was left of them. When more than 200 or those who work in medical service got killed, hundreds of journalists, by the way, got killed in this war. Children, hospitals were destroyed, schools were destroyed, the universities were destroyed, mosques were destroyed. Everything is destroyed. And when Israel mentions the killing of fighters, it considers every Palestinian who is over 18 years old and less than 50 is a fighter. That's when you mentioned the 100 Palestinians who were released to Gaza today, they were arrested as fighters. And Israel used to say, we arrested 100 of fighters or terrorists, and suddenly they release hundreds of them. So every Palestinian in the age of fighting or in the age of being enlisted in the army is considered for Israel a legitimate target. This is what happens. That's why Israel counts the casualties. They don't trust Palestinian casualties, although international community recognizes these statistics. But in Israel, when they say that they killed 13,000 fighter or terrorists, it's the third of those who were killed. The others are women and children. It means that every male, every adult male in Gaza is a legitimate target and considered terrorist for Israel. This is the problem. They considered, like the video that shown an Israeli drone following up 4 guys, and an Israeli fighter killed the 4 of them by hitting them with rockets. They were not armed. Nobody knows. I think they went to check their houses in the area. Israel tried to say they were armed, but they left their arms and they moved with the drone over their heads. I don't think it's something that they can prove. But as always, Israel says that it did not mean, for example, in the killing of the civilian workers, the first reaction before even investigating the incident, they said it wasn't meant to kill them, although everybody knows that they were in 3 separated cars with distance between these cars, and the 3 cars were targeting one by one. So this is the Israeli story facing the Palestinian story, and it seems that the world is no more taking the Israeli narrative in consideration.
Yes, I do understand, what you're saying. The Israeli Defense Forces hardly ever admit, that they made a mistake. In this instance, it was even the Prime Minister who did come out, the head of the Israeli Defense Forces, who also admitted that this was a mistake. Well, that's what they say was a mistake. But I also wanted to get your thoughts and your feelings, perhaps, on the 101 Palestinian prisoners who were released and the conditions in which they're also being released. We understand, according to a doctor who's at the camp there, most of the detainees are shackled by their 4 limbs 24 hours a day, causing severe injuries to their hands, legs, which often require amputation. They're fed through a straw, they're denied toilet access, and undergo major surgeries without proper medical care.
This is the situation in the prisons, and before the 7th of October, the Prime Minister of the so-called national security in Israel, the extremist rightists, Itamar Ben-Gvir, said that he doesn't want to make, he wants to make these prisons conditions very much worse for the Palestinian prisoners. After the 7th of October, he managed to go on this plan. But by the way, I'm talking to you. I have my sister detained by the Israeli authorities a month ago, and she received what is called administrative detention. It's a military order to keep you in prison without charges, and if there are charges, you are not allowed to see these charges, and you are not allowed, and your lawyer is not allowed to see their charges. She was arrested like 3 months or 4 months after her university student was arrested by the Israeli authorities, and a year and a half after the detention of her husband. So my sister, her husband, and her son are in prison now, and they have no charges against them. This is the Israeli policy towards the Palestinians. They can arrest you for no charges, and you can stay in the prison for a long time. Others may face charges if they have proof against him. This is the minimal thing of the Israeli treatment to the Palestinians. When it comes to killing and to torture those prisoners who come out with these with broken bones, with, like you said, amputation because of the plastic ropes or the plastic very tight cuffs they use on the hands and legs. It's terrible to deal people in this way, and at the end you release hundreds of them because they are innocent. They have been doing nothing, but they live with the effect on their psychological and on their physical state. I don't why the world keeps silent, and they are watching everything that happens. Unfortunately, when foreigners get killed, the whole world wakes up.
I'm really sorry hearing about your sister, Haldoun. I can't imagine how tough this is for you to even have to talk about it. But as we, continue to monitor the situation in Gaza, especially now that the aid workers are slowing down, with their work in Gaza, hundreds of people are going to be without food, the necessary foods that they need, because aid has been paused for about 48 hours. I can't imagine how people are surviving down there. But in Ramallah, where you are, we haven't heard of any airstrikes or any attacks by the Israeli Defense Forces. Could you tell us what the situation is where you are?
Yes, I think the audience need to know something, that with Gaza and West Bank where Ramallah is, are 2 separated entities. They are separated by Israel. And I can't go to Gaza. Gazans can't come to the West Bank because we need a special permit from the Israeli authorities or the Israeli security authorities and army and intelligence. So in the West Bank, it's not like what's happening in Gaza, but also it's not safe. Every night there are raids on the Palestinian cities, villages, and refugee camps. Almost every night or every day there are Palestinians who get killed, injured, or arrested. Last night, 40 Palestinians were arrested in the West Bank, including from Ramallah and around. So it happens. Yesterday, the night before yesterday, we couldn't sleep because we have been hearing the Israeli soldiers shooting while trying to arrest someone in refugee camp next to where I live. It's the situation like this. And we can add to the West Bank the situation where settlers are free to, the armed settlers, by the way, they are free to do whatever they like. They can block roads, they can attack villages, they can shoot at cars or throw stones at cars. Palestinian cars, of course, and they are protected by the Israeli army, even when they break into some Palestinian villages. And when the people in that village try to prevent settlers from entering the village, and they don't enter the villages to make peace, of course, they want to assault the people there or their properties. When the Palestinians try to stop them from entering the village or to defend themselves, the Israeli army interferes and he starts shooting live bullets, tear gas, rubber bullets. It's like this. So we don't differentiate between the Israeli army and the settlers in the West Bank. They are the two sides of the same coin. So the situation in the West Bank is not safe. I think 400 Palestinians were killed in the West Bank since the beginning of war. Like I said, almost every day there is 1, 2, 3 Palestinians who get killed by the Israeli army every day.
Khaldun, thank you so much for speaking with us on The World Today.
You're welcome.